In the Kingdom of Fornia, when a member of the royal family turned 13, they received a special gift from the goddess. However, one particular prince wasn't so fortunate. He received no gift at all. Before this event in the courtyard of Fornia Castle, this prince could be found engaged in an intense sparring session with his maid. His name was Theodulf Forian. Each strike from his maid was harder than the last, forcing him to step back. The maid he sparred with was Layla Orstein, his personal maid. Eventually, Theo collapsed from exhaustion, prompting Layla to call it a day. After all, he had the gift confirmation ceremony that evening, and it would be better for him to be in decent shape. Theo's face brightened with joy as he began to shower Layla with compliments, praising her for her many remarkable qualities. She was skilled with a sword, an incredible cook, great at housework, a seasoned adventurer ranked as an S-class, and knew proper etiquette. In short, she was the complete package, the dream girl for every man. Perfect waifu this early? Layla thanked Theo for his kind words and offered her hand to help him up. However, before he could take it, a massive wave of water loomed over him. Acting quickly, Layla pulled Theo to safety just before the wave could drench him. The culprit behind this flashy display was none other than Niels Forian, the second prince of Fornia. He had arrived to flaunt his magic and make Theo look incompetent in comparison. With a smirk, Niels reminded his younger brother that every royal received a gift from the goddess upon turning 13. He questioned why Theo was wasting time practicing in the courtyard. Theo, confused by his brother's taunts, didn't immediately grasp the meaning behind Niels' words. To drive his point home, Niels raised his hand dramatically and summoned a massive fireball, demonstrating his magical prowess. With an air of arrogance, he mocked Theo again, questioning the value of sword practice when such powers could be wielded. Niels added that a royal's gift reflected their personality and traits, and he couldn't wait to see what worthless gift Theo would receive. After showing off his abilities, Niels strolled away, expressing his excitement for the ceremony later that day. Theo, visibly annoyed by his brother's mockery, clenched his fists. Layla quickly stepped closer and buried our boy in her holy valleys. She reminded him that if what Niels said was true, then Theo was sure to receive an incredible gift that would surpass everyone's expectations. Her optimistic words reassured Theo, filling him with hope that the ceremony would reveal something extraordinary. When night fell and the family gathered in the royal court, Theo became the target of scorn for not receiving any blessings or gifts. The family members were both angry and confused, questioning if he was truly royalty, as such a situation had never occurred before in their history. Horror and anxiety were evident on Theo's face, but the situation worsened when Niels erupted into uncontrollable laughter. Wiping tears of joy from his eyes, Niels began mocking Theo again. However, the king swiftly silenced Niels and turned his attention to Theo. With a stern tone, he questioned whether Theo was intentionally trying to disappoint him. This man, none other than Gauss Disgard Forian, the current king of Fornia, expressed his belief that a son forsaken by the goddess had no place in the castle. With that, the king made it clear he no longer wanted Theo to remain in the royal residence. The second prince quickly reminded their father to proceed with the plan he had proposed earlier. The old king decided to follow through and made a final ruling, declaring that Theo would be appointed as the Lord of the Land of Death. This announcement shocked everyone at the ceremony and murmurs spread through the crowd. Theo tried to protest against his father's decision, but the king dismissed him. The Land of Death was a desolate region filled with poisonous air, where no crops could grow and terrifying monsters roamed. It was uninhabitable for humans, and Theo couldn't understand why his father would assign him to such a place. Before he could argue further, the king silenced him by calling him a talentless failure. The insult hit Theo like a sharp sting, and his father made it clear that defying the king's orders was not an option. Theo was told to gather his belongings and leave for the Land of Death immediately. To Theo, this decision was equivalent to being exiled from the kingdom. His brother, ever opportunistic, didn't miss the chance to mock him. Laughing in Theo's face, the prince taunted him, boasting about how he would be busy preparing to become the next king, while Theo would struggle to survive in the wasteland. Feeling powerless and defeated, Theo had no choice but to accept his grim fate. The next day, his carriage finally departed. As it rolled down the path, he waved a final goodbye to his family and friends. However, his arrogant father and narcissistic brother were nowhere to be seen. Settling back into the carriage, he noticed someone else was missing, Laya. He regretted not being able to say goodbye to her one last time. Just as the thought crossed his mind, her voice called out, telling him she was right in front of him. At first, he didn't react, lost in his own thoughts. But then he suddenly realized she was sitting directly across from him. Startled, he quickly asked what she was doing there. Layla calmly replied that she would be wherever he was. He reminded her that he was heading to the Land of Death and tried to dissuade her, insisting that she didn't have to risk her life. Layla, however, became slightly annoyed and firmly reminded him of her role as his personal maid. Whether it was hell or the demon realm, she declared she would follow him no matter where he went. Theo asked Layla if she was certain about her decision, and she nodded confidently, showing no hesitation. Eventually, he thanked her for coming along, while the maid expressed her gratitude for the chance to spend some time alone with him. Their playful banter continued as the carriage rolled toward its destination. It was then revealed that reaching the land of death would take a few days, and require switching carriages along the way. Theo admittedly felt nervous about the journey, but having Layla with him provided some comfort. Despite this, one thing still bothered him. He wanted to understand why he hadn't received a gift. He wondered if it was because he didn't truly belong to this world. In his previous life, Theo had been nothing more than a corporate worker trapped in a grueling routine like most of our dear viewers. His days were spent working long hours, often late into the night, and even continuing his tasks at home. Life had become a monotonous cycle where every day felt the same. Sometimes he wished he could just play games again, particularly a civilization-building game he had loved during his student days. However, once he joined the workforce, he could never find the time to enjoy it. Adulting is hard, isn't it? One day, his body finally gave out from exhaustion and he found himself in an unfamiliar place. Before him stood a smiling goddess who warmly welcomed him to the realm of the gods. She introduced herself as Goddess Vesta and gently explained the shocking truth: he had passed away. Unsurprisingly, Theo's first reaction was sheer disbelief as the weight of her words sank in. The goddess expressed her condolences for his passing before getting straight to the point. She asked if he would like to be reincarnated into another world. She told him not to ask why he was being reincarnated, as gods had their own complicated reasons. However, she offered him a tempting deal. If he chose to be reincarnated, she would grant him a special power. The mention of power reminded him of a game he had once played, where he could build anything effortlessly. Since he would be living in an unfamiliar world, he would love to have the power of crafting. He explained that there was a game he was really into during his student days and requested the crafting power, just like in that game. The goddess acknowledged his request and granted him that power immediately. Now, in the present moment, Theo wondered if he hadn't received a gift during the ceremony since he already had that power. After all, he had been reincarnated as a prince and hadn't had the chance to craft anything, so he had completely forgotten about it. Layla woke Theo up as they had arrived. As soon as he opened his eyes, he felt embarrassed and shocked to realize he had been sleeping on her lap. Layla reassured him that there was no need to be shocked, as he was the one who had fallen there. She had wanted to admire his sleeping face a little longer, but she quickly pointed out the coachman, who was getting frustrated. The coachman had a point. He couldn't stand there all day while they took their time flirting in his carriage. They hurriedly exited, and in front of them stretched the barren land of death. Theo hadn't expected anyone to be there, but couldn't help but comment on how lifeless the place seemed. He wondered if they would have to spend the night outside since it would get cold. Layla reassured him not to worry, saying she could keep him warm all night with her body heat if necessary. Theo dismissed the idea, doubting that body heat alone would be enough in such a place. Poor Layla felt a bit dejected hearing this, and Theo realized, a little creeped out, that she had been serious about her suggestion. She turned away, thinking to herself that although she had missed this opportunity to get close to him, there would surely be plenty more chances to claim her prey. Theo's first plan was to secure a house for them. After thinking for a moment, he remembered his crafting ability. A smile spread across his face as he realized it was finally time to use his power. He quickly asked Layla if she could chop down the nearby trees. She grabbed her sword and dashed off, cutting through the trees effortlessly, leaving only fallen trunks behind. Theo was amazed by her strength, but then again, it was expected from a former adventurer. Layla then asked what he planned to do with the logs, and Theo replied that he intended to build a house. They gathered all the logs together, and once they were done, Theo approached the pile to use his ability. He wasn't sure how to use his power since he hadn't had a chance to practice lately, and he had never crafted anything as large as a house before. He focused on understanding the control and structural integrity needed. As he began to imagine the house in his mind, the wood started moving on its own. In the blink of an eye, an entire house was formed. Layla was completely stunned by this display of power and asked him about it. Theo shared how he was not able to receive a gift during the ceremony since he already had one right from the start. Layla couldn't have been prouder of her master, so she quickly hugged him so tightly that his head got stuck between her bazungas. As he choked, he mumbled, and she apologized, saying she couldn't contain herself. They decided to head inside, and as soon as they entered, they were amazed by how perfectly everything was arranged in the house. The fact that it was all made from wood and stone left her in awe. However, when Theo entered the bedroom, he realized he had a bed frame but no mattress, which made him realize that he couldn't create anything without materials. Layla quickly offered to give him her clothes as a substitute. Theo then used his auto-craft ability, and in no time a cozy bed was ready for them. But with one problem solved, another arose. Layla was practically naked, her nightgown barely covering her curves. She quickly ran toward Theo while he tried his best to keep a safe distance. Layla, however, believed she needed to stay close enough to protect him, even pinning him against the wall. Eventually, Theo gave in, and as the night went on, he ended up sharing the bed with her, but he quickly got up again, feeling too uncomfortable with how close she was. Despite his efforts, he found himself back in bed with no choice but to stay with the tempting Layla. Thus, their first day in the land of death came to an end. Theo reflected on how he managed to survive, thanks to Layla and his gift. As long as she was with him, he felt safe. In the middle of the night, their entire home suddenly began to shake. Theo stepped outside to see what was happening and spotted a minotaur charging toward him, its club raised, ready to crush him. Just as the club was about to land, Layla saved him at the last second and the blow struck the ground instead. She drew her sword, preparing to deal with the monster. Furious that this creature had ruined her perfect honeymoon with Prince Theo, she was determined to fight back. Theo felt some concern for Layla, but then he remembered just how strong she was. He had seen her defeat monsters like this before, so he knew she could handle it. However, his main concern wasn't Layla, it was his own uselessness. He hated the idea of always hiding behind her whenever they faced a threat. Determined to take action, Theo stepped forward and told her to stand back. He decided to reuse the materials from their house. Once he activated his autocraft ability, the house disassembled into raw wood. As the Minotaur charged, Theo began to imagine a weapon. The creature stared at him, confused. In an instant, Theo crafted a massive wooden drop axe. With a pull of the trigger, he sent the giant weapon crashing down like a meteor. The Minotaur was crushed beneath its weight, leaving it lifeless on the ground. Theo felt a surge of excitement. Everything had turned out even better than he had expected. As he reflected on his past, when he had been exiled from the capital and unsure of what to do, he felt a sense of purpose he hadn't known before. Layla rushed over and pulled him into a tight embrace, praising his incredible abilities. At that moment, Theo realized that he had finally found his purpose. He was genuinely excited. In the barren land, with his gift to craft anything as long as he had the materials, he felt like he was in the game he had loved during his student days. He turned to Layla and told her that he had finally found something he wanted to do. Curious, she asked what he meant. With confidence, Theo cleared up her doubts and declared that he would rebuild the barren land with his powers and reclaim the Land of Death. This place was the northern frontier of the Fornia Kingdom, also known as the Land of Death. It was Theo's first morning there, all thanks to the home they had built the previous day. With a new day on the horizon, Theo needed to figure out what to do next. He went to the kitchen and saw that Layla had already prepared breakfast. The food looked lavish, especially considering they were in the middle of a barren land. When Theo took his first bite, his taste buds practically danced with happiness. Layla, however, apologized, saying it wasn't exactly fancy since she had only used the supplies they brought from the castle. She promised that if he didn't have enough, she would gladly give him her portion. Speaking of supplies, Theo realized that the rations they brought wouldn't last forever. His first goal was to do something about it. When Layla suggested starting a farm, Theo agreed, thinking that if they could establish a steady food supply, they might even attract people to settle in this barren land. After finishing breakfast, they headed outside to start building. However, Theo's excitement quickly faded when he saw why this place was called the Land of Death. The soil was completely unsuitable for growing crops. Layla then explained that there was a rumor this land had once suffered a disaster that contaminated the soil with noxious air. The kingdom had tried to reclaim it several times, but clearly it hadn't worked. Still, Theo wasn't one to give up. He quickly used his autocraft ability, and with just a stone and a stick, he crafted a stone hoe to dig into the soil and soften it. Together, they worked to create a proper field. After they finished softening the soil, they fertilized it, and with that, their work for the day was done. All they could do now was hope it would be enough to grow some crops later. Exhausted, Theo laid his head down on the dining table. He had no idea farming could be this hard. He then thought about taking a dump, but Layla quickly reminded him that it wouldn't be easy since the water was contaminated with noxious air. They needed to be frugal with the limited water they had brought. By now, not only did he have to deal with food supplies and fend off monsters, but securing a water source had become another problem to solve. He thought to himself that this place wasn't called the Land of Death for nothing. As night descended, Theo shared his bed with Layla. As usual, he quickly got up when he felt her too close to him. But when he looked at her, he realized she was sleeping soundly, even though only a few seconds had passed since they got into bed. He figured this couldn't be helped, especially since she had woken up earlier than him, cooked for him, and worked much harder on the farm than he had. Now that he thought about it, he realized he was pretty useless compared to Layla, and he knew he needed to step up his game. So he decided to go to sleep, determined to work twice as hard as Layla the next day. As he drifted off to sleep, he suddenly found himself teleported to the place he had gone after his first death. The shock hit him deeply and he wondered if he had died again. However, Goddess Vesta quickly reassured him that he was still perfectly fine. She explained that she had simply summoned his consciousness back to this place. She bowed her head and sincerely apologized for the mess she had caused, which had led to him being abandoned in the barren lands. She went on to explain that she hadn't been able to give him a gift when he turned 13, which was why he had been exiled. To clear up his confusion, she mentioned that since he already had autocraft, she couldn't bestow another skill upon him. She explained that giving a human 2 or more gifts could cause their heart to explode and their bodily fluids to burst out. She continued apologizing, but Theo quickly told her to relax. In fact, he was really grateful to her, especially for the exciting gift she had given him. The goddess nearly teared up at how comforting Theo was and in her gratitude tried to leap onto him. However, Theo wasn't too thrilled about being smothered by her large holy melons, so he quickly took a defensive stance. Just then, the goddess stopped in her tracks, remembering something. She pulled out a metal bar and explained that it was a god metal imbued with the power of the gods. She added that they weren't allowed to bring it into the mortal realm, but she was willing to let him have it. Theo, curious, asked if she was really sure he could have something so valuable. The goddess quickly hushed him, telling him to keep his voice down because he was her favorite. This special gift was just for him. She decided to give him a bonus, kissing him on the cheek, which left Theo completely embarrassed. Before she left, she told him that the thing she had given him was a little blessing, so he better make good use of it. She wished him the best of luck and assured him she would always be rooting for him. As expected from Miss Groomer number 1, Theo woke up in his bed, wondering if everything that had happened was just a dream. However, the sensation of the kiss felt too real to be anything but genuine. Suddenly, he noticed something moving under his blanket. When he pulled the sheets off his legs, he found Groomer number 2, who might be trying to pluck the wood. He quickly asked what she was doing. She explained that she had felt something hard and wanted to see what it was. Theo didn't understand at first, but became embarrassed when he realized he might be actually pitching the tent. He told her that it was a natural biological response. However, it turned out that the hard thing she had felt was actually a metal bar. She asked him what it was, and Theo explained that it was the god metal he had received as a gift from the goddess. However, Layla then dropped some bad news. When Theo stepped outside, he was shocked to see that the soil they had prepared the previous day had reverted to its original state. He came to terms with the fact that the barren land seemed hopeless and that farming here was impossible. Layla decided to till the land again and suggested that they try a different fertilizer and keep experimenting. Theo tried to remind her that their efforts seemed pointless, but just as he felt hopeless, he remembered his own words about needing to work hard from now on. He grabbed the hoe and confidently told her to take a break since she had worked all day yesterday. It was his turn now. He encouraged her to focus on sword practice because mindlessly tilling wouldn't get them anywhere. Their first goal should be to find a suitable fertilizer for the land. The only problem was that he didn't know much about the soil's properties. As he spoke, a system window popped up. It stated that the soil from the Land of Death was ranked E, meaning it was the worst quality, and no crops could grow until it was purified by a divine blessing. While Theo stared at the status window, Layla watched him closely, making him think she couldn't see it. He wasn't sure why this information about the soil had appeared before him, but he soon remembered the kiss from the goddess and realized that it must have been the divine blessing she had given him. Now that he knew he couldn't grow crops without purifying the soil with a divine blessing, he got back to work. Though he wasn't entirely sure how to purify the land, he pulled out the god metal bar, which was ranked as divine. It was a special metal created by the gods, and any tools made with it would carry a divine blessing. Theo quickly figured out a solution. He grabbed his hoe, removed the stick, and combined it with the god metal to create a divine hoe. Why does this sound wrong? As soon as he used the hoe on the soil, a blinding light appeared. When he looked around, there seemed to be no change. However, when he grabbed some soil and checked the status window, he saw that it had turned into divine soil. With the divine blessing, anyone living on it would receive the goddess's blessing, allowing them to grow excellent crops. A big smile spread across Theo's face as he celebrated with a happy dance. He called out to Layla, telling her that with this hoe, they could purify the soil, and they would finally be able to grow crops. Layla leaped up to give him a hug for his efforts, but to her surprise, Theo jumped right over her on his own. This made the maid flustered despite being the aggressive woman she was. Theo believed that it was all thanks to Layla and the goddess that he had finally been able to do something useful. Tears of joy filled his eyes as he thanked her. At that moment, Layla reached her boiling point. Overcome with emotions, her head exploded. This even marked the duo's success in obtaining fertile fields. Later, Vesta was enjoying a relaxing bath, and while she unwound, she seemed to be watching Theo through her crystal ball. At that moment, another goddess named Athen arrived and asked why Vesta was so obsessed with this boy. Vesta explained that Theo was incredibly clever and had already turned the god metal into a hoe to cleanse the land of toxins. Athen shrugged and bragged about her own hero, insisting that her chosen hero was better than Theo. Vesta then exposed Athen by pointing out that she always picked cute girls to be her heroes, which made Athen come off as a bit of a lolicon. Athen defended herself, claiming it wasn't her fault that all the heroes turned out to be cute. She also didn't want to be accused by a shotacon like Vesta. Despite their banter, Athen admitted that Theo was worth watching because he seemed to have a connection with her cute hero. Vesta couldn't believe such a connection existed, but remained fixated on Theo through her crystal ball. Back with the duo, we learned that the previous night, Theo had read some documents about when the kingdom had tried to reclaim the area. According to the documents, the noxious air had only contaminated the surface, meaning everything deep underground should still be safe. This also suggested that the water beneath the surface should be drinkable. With that in mind, Theo successfully crafted an underground well. After taking a sample of the water, the system confirmed it was C-rank water with good quality. They both clinked their glasses together as if celebrating with wine before drinking it down. Now that they had water, all they needed to do was finish tilling the land, sow some seeds, and water them to grow crops. But it wasn't as simple as it sounded because there was just too much land to till. Eventually, Theo collapsed in the middle of the work, completely exhausted. Layla brought him some water and told him to take a break while she picked up the hoe to continue working by herself. Theo reminded her of the last time she fainted from overworking. Truth be told, that explosion hadn't just been caused by her exhaustion, and they both knew that. Theo, on the other hand, stuck to his stance and firmly told her to rest. He warned her that overworking was dangerous. Though he didn't say it aloud, he was speaking from experience as he had died from overwork. Layla could clearly sense the seriousness of his words. Theo still had no idea how he was going to till all the land. All he could do was wish he had a tractor, but unfortunately, he couldn't make one because he didn't have the materials. Layla overheard him and suggested that while she didn't know much about tractors, it would probably be best to get help from others or use cattle. She made a valid point, but the problem was that no one would want to move to such barren land, and they couldn't even bring cattle there. Then Layla suggested that he use his autocraft ability to create the cattle. The thought of human transmutation from Full Metal Alchemist sent chills down Theo's spine, and he admitted he was too scared to try it, not knowing what the price might be. Layla quickly clarified she was joking, but Theo pointed out that she didn't sound like she was joking at all. After thinking for a moment, Theo came up with an idea, thanking Layla for the inspiration. He decided he would create whatever he didn't have. Layla asked if he was really going to try human transmutation, but he assured her that wasn't the plan. Instead, he explained that he could create something that would follow their commands, a golem. He reminded her that they would need a lot of earth stones and magicite. Magicite was a stone containing magic power harvested from monsters. It was commonly used to enhance weapons, create magical items, and act as an energy source. Layla, feeling disappointed because she couldn't provide what Theo needed, became gloomy. In an attempt to make up for it, she even offered to give up her body and started stripping. Theo quickly reminded her that they already had magicite from the monster they had defeated. Once Theo gathered the stones and other materials, he used his autocraft magic to create a golem. The stones came together and a giant stone man came to life. Layla was amazed that he had created a golem and felt proud of him. Theo then decided to command the golem. As soon as the creature heard its master's voice, it dashed toward him. The sudden dash terrified Theo for a moment, but contrary to what he expected, the golem simply picked him up and tossed him over its shoulder like a father carrying a child. Layla quickly stepped back to protect Theo, but he reassured her that the golem didn't seem hostile. However, Layla, who was feeling jealous, couldn't tolerate the golem's affectionate behavior toward Theo, even though he reminded her that golems didn't have emotions. Or did they? Layla pointed out that since Theo had created the golem using an unorthodox method, it was likely he had imbued it with emotions. Theo decided to get to work. He commanded his golem, and the large creature quickly grabbed a hoe and started tilling the ground with such speed that it seemed almost unbelievable. Before they knew it, the land was tilled. By afternoon, they had planted the seeds and watered them. The golem then went to sleep while Theo and Layla sat down for dinner. Theo felt happy and looked forward to the coming months, eager to see the first crop of food they had planted. The next day, they were shocked to find that everything they had planted had fully grown. Even the vegetables that were out of season had sprouted abundantly. He never expected such a quick harvest. What mattered most to him now was that his food supply issue had finally been solved. Thanks to the blessed soil, the vegetables grew to full size overnight. However, Theo wasn't sure how they would taste, so Layla decided to test them for any potential effects. The system window quickly confirmed that they were of excellent quality with no side effects. Theo took a bite, and the flavors exploded in his mouth. It was the juiciest, tastiest thing he had ever eaten. For a moment, he even wondered if the tomato was actually a vegetable. He quickly tossed one to Layla, telling her it was unbelievably good. Reluctantly, she took a bite. and she too was delighted by the taste. Theo was convinced that if they were this good raw, they would be even better cooked, so they both decided to start cooking. Once inside, Layla used her godlike speed to cook, whipping up a variety of delicious dishes in no time. When they took their first bites, it was like tasting a slice of heaven. The intense flavors were almost beyond belief, and each taste of the vegetables felt authentic and fresh. The dishes, made with the best ingredients and technique, were so incredible that they couldn't speak for several minutes, completely lost in the flavors. With the harvest issue solved, Theo headed outside to tackle the next task. He called his golem, which he had named Gorm, and asked if he had gathered the materials. The golem promptly pointed to a pile of rocks and logs he had collected. Layla, curious, asked what the Gorm was, and Theo explained it was the golem's new name. He had tried calling him that once, and Gorm seemed to like it. Looking at the materials, Layla asked what he planned to build. As soon as her brain connected the dots, she wondered if he was planning to build a separate house to live away from her. Theo had considered that, but for now, with a source of water available, it was time to build a place to wash away their fatigue. Using his autocraft ability, he created an outdoor hot spring styled like a traditional Japanese inn. It was exactly the kind of hot spring he had always wanted to experience, complete with bubbly soap and a body sponge made from different materials. He even set up separate sections for men and women. He eagerly hopped over to the men's side and told Layla to meet up later after respectively taking their own bath. Layla didn't say anything as Theo left. Theo cheerfully went to the bath, deciding to clean up before relaxing. Layla then offered to wash him, and Theo agreed. They both fell silent for a moment as they stared at each other. Theo suddenly panicked and pointed out that they weren't in the women's bath. Layla responded that there was no need to separate the baths by gender. Our groomer number 2 never loses her chance at all. She reminded him of their relationship, with her being his maid, and insisted that as his servant she had to fulfill her duties completely. She claimed that Theo couldn't clean himself properly and leaned closer to him, causing Theo to become flustered. Theo ordered her to leave him alone, but Layla was determined to ignore his request, stating that she wouldn't follow the order even if he was her master. Theo questioned their master-servant relationship, and Layla asked if there was anything wrong with a master and servant having reasonable physical contact. Theo shouted that her actions were completely unreasonable. In the end, Theo was defeated as Layla washed him thoroughly. They both relaxed in the hot spring as the night continued quietly. Layla pointed out how beautiful the stars were, which made Theo smile. He realized that he would never have been able to enjoy such a view in his past life or in the capital. He felt thankful for being sent to these barren lands, where he could experience such luxury. However, they weren't completely alone. From a distance, someone watched them from a cliff. The figure had pointed ears and a long furry tail, clearly identifying her as a fox girl. She was fascinated by the steam rising from the hot spring, as it wasn't every day that she saw humans in this land. Theo had a routine where he woke up early each day to practice sword fighting with Layla. Afterward, he would check the fields and work hard to harvest vegetables. Although the work was tough and the soil could get messy, he refused to slack off. Before bed, Theo always took some time to read with Layla. This quiet moment was important to him as it allowed him to organize his thoughts and plan for the future. Life in the land of death was stable and enjoyable for Theo, but there was one concern that weighed on his mind. He couldn't seem to get any citizens to settle in the town he was building. Despite the comfort of his life, this wasn't his ultimate goal. Even though he counted Gorm as a citizen, he still only had 2 people living in the town, meaning it wouldn't qualify as a village. Normally, anyone living within his domain would automatically become his citizen, but this was the land of death, so he figured people might just wander in by chance. That was the hope he clung to. Then, one day, Theo heard quiet movements coming from the fields. For a brief moment, he felt excited, thinking someone might have wandered onto his land. But that excitement quickly turned to horror when he saw a giant beast standing before him. However, something strange caught his attention. The divine aura radiating from the beast felt oddly similar to the goddess's presence. As he tried to make sense of this, the beast spoke, telling him not to be so scared. The sound of a monster talking only terrified Theo more, as it was something he was definitely not used to. The beast then introduced herself as Luna, a proud Fenrir, a divine wolf. The mention of Fenrir brought some memories to Theo. He recalled stories about a giant wolf shrouded in the power of the gods, and that very few had witnessed such a legendary creature. Theo wasn't sure how he was supposed to fight something like that, especially with how intimidating it looked. The wolf then asked if he hadn't heard her when she said not to be afraid, and reminded him once again that she hadn't come there to fight. At that moment, the wolf began to transform, shifting into a beautiful lady. Her sudden transformation shocked Theo for a moment. The wolf lady apologized for startling him and explained that she was there because she had a request. She asked if he could share some of his vegetables with her. Theo was bewildered that she had come all this way just for that, and she didn't seem hostile at all. He decided to share some. mentioning that they had a big harvest and she was more than welcome to help herself. He handed her a tomato, and when she took a bite, she felt as if she had transcended to the state of the gods. The flavor dissolved in her mouth, leaving her in complete ecstasy. She admitted that she hadn't eaten anything so delectable in 1,000 years. She explained that 1,000 years ago, the land wasn't poisoned by noxious air. Back then, it teemed with excellent crops, though they weren't as incredible as what Theo grew now. However, a devastating war had ravaged the area, turning it into a wasteland filled with poisonous air. The mention of a great war surprised Theo. He had always believed that noxious air was the result of a natural disaster. He turned to her, curious, and asked if she had been living in the land of death for 1,000 years. She nodded in agreement. Theo then asked if it wouldn't be better for her to move somewhere else. Luna calmly explained that the place was her home and it was precious to her. She simply couldn't abandon it, no matter how much it had become a wasteland. She was also happy that Theo had brought beauty back to the land. She then asked for his name, and Theo introduced himself as Theophorian. Luna was deeply grateful for his kindness and the food he offered her. She wanted to repay him, but even though Theo insisted he didn't need anything in return, Luna refused to let his favor go unreturned. For her, not returning a favor was unthinkable. In the end, she leaned in and gave him a gentle kiss on the forehead, explaining that it was a Fenrir favor, a token of her gratitude. And for now, it was all she could offer. After giving him a comforting pat, she mentioned how she hadn't felt this happy in a long time. With that, Luna began to walk away. Theo, however, remembered how she had been living in the land of death for 1,000 years, and an idea formed in his mind. He called out to her, asking if she would consider becoming a citizen of his domain. Luna turned back with an astonished look, but soon a playful expression crossed her face as she teased him, wondering if he was trying to tame a Fenrir lady. Theo quickly denied such thoughts. Luna chuckled softly, patted him on the head, and assured him it was just a joke. She then told Theo she needed some time to think about his request. She had her own circumstances, and his proposal was a bit unexpected. She wanted to take her time before making a decision. With another sweet smile, she promised that the next time they met, she would have an even better gift for him, and he should look forward to it. Theo was left blushing from the exchange while Luna turned back into her wolf form. She gave him a final farewell before disappearing into the distance. Theo decided to keep his interaction with Luna a secret from Laya. He figured Laya might overreact if she found out a woman had spoken to him, and he wasn't sure how she would take it. The next day, everything seemed normal for Theo, or so he thought. Unbeknownst to him, it was the day his peaceful life would be turned upside down. Out of nowhere, a woman appeared in the scene, looking utterly exhausted and desperate as she begged for help. She was so drained that she collapsed on the ground. Theo quickly instructed Layla to fetch the first aid kit. After some time, the woman regained consciousness and found herself lying on a bed in Theo's room. Disoriented and unsure of her surroundings, she asked where she was. Theo, relieved to see her awake, and asked about her condition. The woman assured him she was fine, though still somewhat confused. She then asked who they were, prompting Theo to introduce himself and Layla. He explained that she had collapsed in front of his house. The woman, overwhelmed with gratitude, introduced herself as Aisha and expressed how glad she was to meet them. Curious, Theo asked what had brought her there. As Aisha tried to recall the reason, she became overwhelmed with terror, her fear escalating until her head throbbed intensely. Theo quickly urged her to rest and ordered Layla to bring some healing herbs they had obtained from the castle. The herbs were known for their potent healing properties and could be blended into medicine for treating injuries. However, crafting effective remedies for them requires advanced skill. Luckily, Theo had the ability to create powerful healing medicine with ease, thanks to his auto-crafting ability. Aisha was shocked when a potion bottle materialized almost miraculously in Theo's hands. As soon as she drank it, her body began to heal instantly. Her wounds closed as if they had never existed, and the pain she had been enduring disappeared entirely. Aisha was in awe of the potion's effect and asked Theo if he was a wizard or an alchemist. Theo confidently replied that it wouldn't be far off to call him either. Aisha then inquired if this place was near Fornos, the fortress city built to protect against the monsters of the Land of Death. Theo explained that Fornos was dozens of miles away from the border of the Land of Death, which left Aisha shocked. She hadn't realized she had wandered so deep into this forsaken territory. Theo confirmed her fears with a simple nod. Realizing her mistake, Aisha felt devastated. She had gone in the wrong direction and now she wasn't sure what to do. Panic overtook her as she lamented her situation, knowing that if she didn't act quickly, the people depending on her might not survive. Aisha explained that she was a resident of Moa village located in the Vitoa territory. A few days ago, a group of goblins attacked the village. The villagers had no way to defend themselves, making them easy targets. The goblins immediately began demanding food. However, they didn't stop there. They continued to ask for more and more. When the villagers protested, explaining that they would starve if they gave them any more, the goblins made an even worse demand. They wanted all the women. Goblins could breed with human women, and the consequences of giving in to their demands were clear. Naturally, the villagers refused. In response, the goblins threatened to kill everyone one by one if they didn't comply. Aisha fled the village, hoping to find help and save her people. When Theo asked why she was heading to Fornos instead of directly appealing to the Lord of Vitoa, Aisha explained that she had already tried. The Lord had outright refused, saying he had no time to help a backwater village. Theo recalled hearing about the Lord of Vitoa, who had a reputation as a tyrant. He was known for imposing heavy taxes on his people without caring for their suffering. Even during a famine, when his land was in dire need, he did nothing to help his people. Aisha decided to leave, knowing her people were waiting for help. She thanked Theo for looking after her, but just as she turned to go, Theo called out to her and motioned for her to wait. He led her to a warehouse filled with construction materials and other supplies. He felt a sense of pride, knowing he had stocked up in case he needed them. Layla acknowledged this but was unsure of his plan for all of it. Theo told her to watch and prepared to use a recently discovered sub-ability of his, Autocraft. This ability allowed him to recreate a feature commonly seen in video games, the inventory system. With a wave of his hand, all of the supplies and materials were sucked into an invisible space, leaving the warehouse hall completely empty. Aisha, amazed by what she saw, asked where everything had gone. Theo tried to explain that it was similar to magic, and he had stored everything in a dimension of his own creation. He then asked her to lead the way to the village, despite knowing the journey would take a long time. Theo was determined to help the villagers. Later, the three of them rode on the back of Gorm toward Moa village. Aisha asked Theo once again if he was sure about his decision. Although Theo was determined to save the village, she reminded him that it was still dangerous. Theo, however, remained resolute and assured her to leave everything to him. Despite the goblins being a serious threat, Theo was not scared at all. In fact, he felt a surge of courage rising within him. He then remembered the Fenrir's favor that Luna had given him, wondering if it had something to do with his newfound bravery. He decided to check its effects using his analysis ability. Reviewing the details, he saw the stats listed. Fenrir's favor granted increased leg strength, the willpower to conquer fear, and a special affinity with wolf-type creatures, making them surrender unconditionally to him. Theo felt even more confident and silently thanked Luna for the boost in courage she had given him. Aisha pointed ahead, and when Theo looked, he was shocked to see a large group of goblins harassing the villagers. The sight filled him with anger and frustration, almost overwhelming his self-control. He ordered Gorm to charge straight at the goblins while instructing Layla and Aisha to prepare to jump off Gorm's back on his count. At his signal, the three of them leaped off, and Gorm crashed into the goblins like a cannonball, sending several of them flying. Gorm was like a WWE wrestler entering the ring. While falling, Theo activated his Autocraft ability mid-air, quickly creating a soft landing platform beneath them. The trio landed on the cushioned surface, but Theo ended up awkwardly sandwiched between the two women, feeling as though he were trapped between four holy mountains. Aisha quickly scrambled away from Theo, feeling embarrassed. Meanwhile, goblins began swarming toward them from every direction, ready to attack. Theo ordered Aisha to stay back, deeming it too dangerous for her to fight. Despite his warning, Aisha tried to stop him from rushing into the fray. However, Theo reassured her, expressing his confidence in saving the villagers. His unwavering determination made Aisha's heart race, and she grew even more flustered upon realizing she was blushing because of a kid. Is this the emergence of groomer number 3? Theo and Layla prepared to confront the goblins head-on. Layla unsheathed her sword while Theo activated his Autocraft ability, summoning everything from his inventory. In an instant, thousands of swords materialized around him, creating a scene that seemed straight out of the legends of Gilgamesh. Layla slashed through the goblins with precision, and together they managed to eliminate the horde. The area transformed into a battlefield, littered with fallen monsters. The remaining goblins, overwhelmed and frightened, abandoned the fight and fled to report back to their leader. Layla wanted to pursue them, but Theo immediately stopped her, reminding her that ensuring the villagers' safety was their most urgent priority. The villagers approached Theo, relieved that they had finally been saved. They asked who he was, and Theo introduced himself honestly as the third prince of the Fornia kingdom, and the lord of the land of death. This revelation shocked Aisha and the villagers, and their reactions were far from pleasant. Theo regretted his honesty, thinking it might have been wiser to keep that part to himself, knowing villagers likely held a poor opinion of royals and nobles. Contrary to his expectations, the villagers were amazed to learn he was a prince. They began showering him with gratitude for rescuing them, but Theo quickly reminded them it wasn't necessary. He urged them to stay cautious, explaining that he overheard the goblins mentioning reporting back to their leader, which meant their den was likely hidden somewhere in the forest. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to the goblins' den, where the surviving goblins returned to report their failure. They told their chief that the village was too dangerous to attack, The Goblin King, however, grew furious upon hearing this. With a single swing of his weapon, he struck down the goblin, calling him a disgrace to their kind for running away. He then commanded the remaining goblins to join him, declaring they would show the humans their rightful place. Meanwhile, back in the village chief Galad Moal wanted to express his deep gratitude to Theo for saving them. Theo tried to downplay the situation, saying there was no need for thanks since he had simply done what was right. However, the chief insisted on giving him a gift and offered him what appeared to be a stone. When Theo asked about it, Layla responded in astonishment, explaining that it was a rare, tough metal. She added that accessories and equipment made from it were considered national treasures, and even a small piece like this could be worth hundreds of gold coins. At that moment, a villager stepped forward angrily and shouted at the chief for offering such a valuable gift. He reminded the chief that this metal was the village's treasure, passed down through generations, and accused him of giving it away to these damned royals. Chief Galad sternly told the young man to watch his words, as this was not the way to speak about someone who had saved their lives. The young man, however, stood his ground, insisting that there was no way royals or nobles would risk their lives for commoners, and that Theo must have some ulterior motive. He raised his voice, asking the other villagers if they shared the same opinion. The villagers began murmuring among themselves, clearly divided on what was right or wrong. Theo noticed the distress on their faces, and it became clear to him that they had a strong dislike for nobles. Aisha stepped in to speak on Theo's behalf, trying to ease the tension. She reminded them that Theo wasn't like the lord of the territory. Despite being a stranger, he had helped them and saved all their lives. While the villagers couldn't deny that Theo had saved them, Jack still had a point. However, it seemed the chief had already made up his mind and was ready to give the gift to Theo. Theo tried to refuse, saying it was their village's treasure. But the old man revealed that their village was on the brink of collapse. This sobering revelation made Theo curious, and he asked the chief why he believed the village would meet such a fate. The old man quickly told Theo about the Goblin King who resided in the nearby forest. The Goblin King was the ruler of the goblins and was much stronger and smarter than regular goblins. There were even rumors that he could defeat a minotaur or a Kijin in combat. The chief was certain that the goblins who had run away earlier would likely return with the Goblin King, so he advised all the young villagers to escape as quickly as possible, while the elderly, who could barely stand, should stay behind. Jack, however, refused to comply with this command and made it clear that they would escape together. The old man tried to reason with him, saying that the elderly would only slow the younger ones down, but Jack insisted that he wouldn't leave without everyone and made it clear that he would just defeat the goblins himself. Theo volunteered to help and promised not to leave anyone behind. Aisha and the village chief asked him what his plan was. Theo explained that the goblins were keeping watch around the village to prevent anyone from escaping. There was no way they could flee, so instead of running, they would face the goblins in battle. This meant they needed to fortify the village. Later, Jack sat alone, visibly annoyed. He wasn't ready to trust the royal boy and was convinced there must be an ulterior motive behind his actions. He remembered his father's words, where he was told that strong men must protect the village. Jack believed that once he grew up, he would protect the village just like his father did. For that, he didn't need a royal brat. At that moment, the same royal brat Jack had been badmouthing built an entire watchtower in the blink of an eye, leaving Jack completely stunned. Theo then demanded more crafting materials, saying what he had was not enough. The chief gave him permission to destroy farming tools or even tear down houses if necessary. Other villagers offered their tattered houses materials for the sake of protecting the village. Meanwhile, Jack still thought trusting Theo was the most gullible thing they could do. Theo used his magic again, creating protective walls around the village. After so much construction, Theo felt exhausted and collapsed to the ground. Layla rushed over, concerned, and told him to take a break since he had overused his abilities in such a short time. But Theo insisted there was no time to rest. He was determined to do everything in his power to protect the village. Seeing the determination in Theo's eyes made Jack begin to change his opinion of him, even if only slightly. He remembered how, during the goblin attack, he had been tasked with protecting the village but froze in fear, unable to act. In contrast, this kid had fought the goblins, saved everyone, and was now pushing himself to the limit to protect them again. Feeling a shift in his thoughts, Jack walked confidently over to Theo and asked what he needed to do to help protect the village. Theo immediately started crafting a weapon and created a spear, handing it to Jack. He mentioned that Jack was said to be the most skilled fighter in the village, and if the defenses failed, everyone would rely on him. Jack grabbed the spear but firmly stated that he still didn't trust Theo. He made it clear that his actions were solely for the sake of the village's safety. Despite Jack's hostility, Theo thanked him, only for Jack to reiterate not to misunderstand his intentions. Suddenly, Theo noticed Aisha watching them. When he asked if something was wrong, she jumped, clearly startled. Embarrassed, she denied it, insisting she hadn't been looking at him and claiming he wasn't even in her line of sight. She then pointed out that the children and elderly had been evacuated and asked if there was anything she could do to help. Theo assured her everything was going smoothly, thanks to the villagers' support. Just then, the villagers called out for Theo's assistance. He quickly waved goodbye to Aisha and rushed off to help, leaving her standing there. It was evident that Aisha felt something for him, and the reason was easy to see. However, the moment was interrupted by the sound of massive footsteps echoing through the forest. The Goblin King was approaching, his army of minions in tow, clearly intent on slaughtering the villagers. He couldn't believe that his underlings were so scared of a tiny village. However, he saw this as an opportunity to teach the villagers a lesson and take all the women for breeding. But his confidence faltered when he arrived and saw that the village was not what he had remembered. The villagers were armed with bows, arrows, and spears, and the entire village was surrounded by a protective wall with a watchtower. He broke into a cold sweat. Theo then ordered the goblins to withdraw from the village. He told them that as long as they quietly retreated, the villagers wouldn't harm them. However, if they took one more step forward, Theo warned that both he and the villagers wouldn't hesitate to attack the goblins on sight. The Goblin King was furious at being looked down upon. He angrily commanded his underlings to charge all at once. Theo had no choice but to prepare for a fight and raised his hand to signal the attack. He watched as the goblins grew excited and argued about capturing women to play with. Theo then signaled the villagers to strike. The goblins in the front were crushed by something. The surviving goblins broke into cold sweat and looked toward the source of the shot. From the watchtower, Theo glared down at them, with smoke rising from what appeared to be cannons. He formally announced the beginning of the war against the goblins. More shots were fired, turning more goblins into paste. Some of the goblins managed to reach the walls and began climbing them without fear. As they reached the top, intending to kill the humans, the villagers lowered their spears and stabbed the goblins. This was another tactic Theo had created to eliminate goblins climbing the walls. Theo praised the villagers for their strategy and raised their morale, encouraging them to drive back the invading goblins. The Goblin King could not believe what he was witnessing and became enraged. He raised his sword and slashed the ground before him. The force of the strike created a shockwave so powerful that it destroyed part of the village's defensive wall, toppling the watchtower in the process. Theo was caught by Layla as he fell, and he conjured a soft cushion to break the fall of the other villagers. Once everyone was safe, he instructed them to retreat to the shelter, and the villagers immediately began running for safety. The Goblin King declared that he had been observing and had figured out Theo was the leader directing the villagers in the battle. He claimed that a game would end once the king was removed from the board. Layla readied her sword and proclaimed that the Goblin King would have to go through her first before reaching Theo. The Goblin King initially dismissed Layla as a mere pawn, only to realize she was Theo's queen. He admitted he was fond of strong-willed, attractive women and arrogantly suggested Layla become his. With a disgusted expression, Layla coldly rejected him, saying her heart was already set on someone else. The Goblin King mused whether her heart would be free if he eliminated the person she cared for. His comment infuriated Layla. He ordered his underlings to capture Layla, but instructed them not to harm her face. In response, Layla asked who the Goblin King intended to kill. She assumed a battle stance and unleashed her family's technique, cutting down the goblins before her into chunks of meat. She then charged toward the Goblin King, preparing to use another technique. As she paused in front of him, she declared this would be the end. However, before she could unsheath her sword, a goblin managed to grab her. More goblins piled onto her, pinning her down. The Goblin King ordered them to hold her in place for capture and then turned his attention toward Theo. Layla easily emerged from the mountain of goblins, cutting them down effortlessly with her sword techniques. She reminded the Goblin King to face her first, but the monster ignored her challenge. More goblins swarmed in, blocking her path. Observing their strategy, Layla realized the goblins relied heavily on their sheer numbers for strength. She also recognized her mistake in recklessly charging toward the Goblin King. It became clear that he had deliberately provoked her to separate her from Theo. Although she had heard of the Goblin King's intelligence, she hadn't expected him to be this cunning. Layla called out to Theo, urging him to retreat. She assured him that Gorm could protect him from the Goblin King's attacks. She even offered to distract the monster herself, but Theo refused her suggestion. He argued that retreating would endanger the villagers. Instead, he used his gift to create a sword and decided to confront the Goblin King on his own. The Goblin King mocked him, calling his determination laughable. Theo challenged the Goblin King to see whether it truly was a joke and pulled a massive stone block from his inventory. However, the Goblin King casually punched the block aside without even flinching. Undeterred, Theo turned to nearby materials from the broken watchtower. Using his autocraft skill, he quickly constructed a massive ballista. He fired a bolt, but the Goblin King effortlessly caught it with his bare hands. The monster taunted them, asking if their games were finally over as he couldn't stand wasting time with children. Lifting his sword, the Goblin King ordered Theo to hurry up and die. Theo recognized the Goblin King's attack pattern, an arcing slash capable of creating destructive shockwaves. As the massive blade came crashing down, the same powerful shockwave tore through the ground, leaving the Goblin King disappointed by what he thought was an anticlimactic finish. However, he suddenly sensed something behind him and turned, confused. He was certain he had struck Theo and even felt the impact of the blow. Yet, Theo was now above him, looming with a sword in hand, ready to strike. Theo was in mid-air preparing to slash the goblin. Not long before, he had taken a risky gamble. He used autocraft on the ground beneath him and raised a platform made of 5 earth blocks. Thanks to this, he managed to avoid the Goblin King's attack. The Goblin King had aimed for the earth blocks, not Theo himself. Jumping over the Goblin King was his only chance to fight back while the boss monster was completely distracted. He was confident he had the Goblin King now and felt it was time to show the results of his training with Layla. Theo then used a technique he had learned from Layla and struck at the Goblin King's exposed back. However, the attack was ineffective, and his sword shattered into pieces. Confused, Theo realized how tough the Goblin King's skin was, as his blade hadn't even left a mark. The Goblin King loomed over him and kicked him away. Theo was sent flying like a football and crashed into a nearby tree. The Goblin King mockingly praised him for scaring him for a moment and suggested Theo could have used a sharper blade. Despite being injured, Theo tried to get back up and prepare for another fight. The Goblin King raised his leg ready to crush him with a stomp, claiming it was checkmate. Just then, someone ran in shouting. The Goblin King turned to see Jack stabbing him in the back with a spear. However, the spear broke easily, making Jack anxious. Theo was surprised to see him and wondered why he had joined the fight. Jack explained that the frontliners who had retreated told him what happened. They shared how Layla was overpowering the goblins, but Theo was fighting the Goblin King alone. Theo protested, saying Jack couldn't have come to help. Jack told him to shut up and reminded Theo that he would have almost died if Jack hadn't arrived. Angered, the Goblin King called Jack a lowly pawn and raised his sword to eliminate him. Theo got back up to stop the Goblin King from killing Jack. The Goblin King turned to Theo and commented that humans were soft-hearted. Theo was shocked to realize that the Goblin King's true target had always been him. He was now too late to dodge, and there was no way his trick would work again. Suddenly, a familiar figure patted Theo's back. It was Luna, the Fenrir lady. She had said she would lend a hand. Her skill, Fenrir's favor, activated, boosting Theo's leg strength. A sudden surge of power spread through his legs. Theo ducked and charged forward, avoiding the Goblin King's sword slash. The Goblin King was caught off guard by Theo's sudden speed, but he wasn't concerned since Theo only had a blunt sword. Theo then asked how it looked this time. He remembered how Chief Galad had given him their village's treasure, describing it as a rare, tough metal. Theo used his autocraft skill to turn the orichalcum into a sword. Jack was surprised by the sight. He recalled how the chief had told him when he was young that the precious metal was not only their village's treasure, but also their guardian deity, which would protect them in times of need. Chief Galad was right. As a sword, their precious treasure helped them defeat the Goblin King. With Theo wielding it and Layla's family technique passed down to him, the Goblin King was injured for the first time, which shocked Jack. The monster fell to the ground with a loud thud. Theo was exhausted, and realizing he had defeated the Goblin King, his body gave out. As he collapsed, Jack caught him and told him he did well. Theo was happy to hear that and said Jack had done the same. The fight ended with the two boys sharing a fist bump. Layla finally returned and the three of them went to the shelter. Theo then told everyone they could come out now. Aisha asked if that meant something. Theo confirmed they had won, and Aisha immediately dove into him, burying her face in his chest. Layla tried to stop her but held back when she saw Aisha crying uncontrollably. Aisha thanked Theo from the bottom of her heart. Theo looked pleased while Layla stepped back, feeling a bit jealous this time. Theo tried to calm Aisha, telling her that everything was over now. At night, the villagers celebrated their victory and Theo's help by raising their mugs in a toast. Theo felt happy seeing everyone safe. However, he didn't expect to end up stuck between Aisha's chest. He wondered how things had turned out like this. Layla gave Aisha a sharp look and asked if they could switch places. Aisha, flustered, told Layla to stop scaring her. But Layla quickly pulled Theo away and offered him food she had cooked. Not wanting to lose, Aisha brought her own cooking to compete. Both women understood the unspoken battle between them. The village chief laughed at the lively scene, calling it youthful energy. Theo asked him to help, but the old man said he wouldn't ruin the fun for the young people. Then the chief looked around and commented on how happy everyone was thanks to Theo. He even joked, saying he wished Theo were their lord so every day could be like this. Hearing this, Theo realized something and excused himself from Aisha and Layla. Using autocraft, he made a step stool and climbed onto it. He called for everyone's attention and got straight to the point. He asked them to become his citizens in the Land of Death, which he ruled. The villagers froze for a moment, knowing what the Land of Death was. Sensing their worries, Theo reminded them about his special power. He explained that he had been reclaiming the Land of Death with it, but he couldn't handle everything alone. He asked them to join him and lend their help. Jack quickly raised his hand in agreement and told the others to stay behind if they didn't trust Theo. Some of them complained, saying Jack was acting arrogant, especially since he had doubted Theo at the start. Aisha announced that she would also join Theo. The village chief decided to go as well and urged everyone to be honest about their choice. Despite their fears of the Land of Death, more villagers started raising their hands. Cheers erupted for Theo, who felt happy to see their support. They now had an extra reason to celebrate. Theo had become their new lord. That night, everyone celebrated and drank until late. The next morning, Theo and the villagers began their journey. Theo stored whatever could fit in the wagons into his inventory, along with the elder, and had Gorm pull the wagon. After walking for half a day, they reached Theo's domain. The land was barren, with only one house standing in the middle of an empty field. The group felt awkward for a moment until Theo decided to take action. He brought out the villagers' houses from his inventory and used autocraft to set them up. He had planned this earlier with Layla for when they would finally settle down. He built the houses for now, planning to rebuild them later if needed. In no time, a village was created. Aisha was impressed, and Layla noted how it matched Theo's plans perfectly. Suddenly, Theo collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Theo woke up and found himself back in his house. He remembered fainting after creating several houses in an instant and realized he needed to improve his stamina. A moment later, Aisha entered his room wearing a maid outfit and asked if he was feeling better. Theo became flustered seeing her dressed like that. Layla then explained that she was training Aisha as a maid because she believed Aisha had potential for the role. Aisha happily said she was excited to work with Theo, but Layla gave her a light smack and scolded her for not addressing Theo properly as master. In truth, Layla was jealous of how casually Aisha spoke to him. Theo told Aisha to keep speaking to him the way she normally did, as he would feel awkward if she changed her behavior. Theo got out of bed and asked about the villagers, worrying they might be unhappy with their new living conditions. Layla directed him to look out the window. When he did, Theo saw how lively everyone was. Aisha added that the villagers were excited about their new lives. Hearing this, Theo felt relieved and happy. If his people were enjoying their new home, he would feel content as well. He then began wondering what he should focus on next after gaining citizens. Meanwhile, in the Kingdom of Fornia, at the royal capital, King Gauss Discard Forian spoke about a hero named Alice Scarlet, who had achieved another great accomplishment. However, Alice simply shrugged it off, saying it was just what a hero was supposed to do. Seeing how dependable she was, the king commented that the goddess would be pleased. Alice let out a sarcastic laugh and thanked him for the compliment. Her two companions, however, looked uneasy. The knight Sana warned Alice to be more careful with her words, while the mage Martina nervously begged her to behave in front of the king. The king then asked if Alice wanted to have a celebration, even offering to invite his son. At the thought of Theo, Alice hesitated and asked if he would come too. The king remembered their long-standing friendship and thanked Alice for putting up with his son. However, he told her not to worry about seeing Theo anymore. Confused, Alice asked what he meant. The king explained that since Theo had no special talent, the goddess had abandoned him and he could never receive a gift. Alice's eyes widened in shock when she heard that Theo had been exiled to the Land of Death. The king added that Theo was unlikely to return, assuming he had either run away or perished. Alice gripped her sword tightly, furious at the king's words. She swore she would kill him, but before she could act, Sana quickly intervened, covering Alice's mouth. She nervously told the king that Alice was just tired and that it would be best to end the conversation. As Alice struggled to speak, Sana firmly declared that they would refuse the party. Without waiting for a response, she grabbed Alice and hurriedly left, making a quick excuse to escape. Outside, Alice asked Sana why she had stopped her. Sana called her foolish and said their heads would roll if she killed the king. But Alice couldn't believe that the old man had banished Theo. Sana told her not to insult the king and said she understood that Alice was worried about her dear Theo. Alice quickly denied it, saying Theo wasn't her future husband or anything like that. Since Theo had been sent to the Land of Death, Alice insisted they should leave the capital. She was already tired of dealing with the royal family and wanted nothing more to do with them. Just as she was about to leave, Niels appeared. He greeted her and proudly showed off that he was now the crown prince. He didn't care that Alice was blessed by the goddess. Instead, he reminded her that she was just a commoner and ordered her to respect him. Alice didn't want to talk to him, so she turned to leave. Niels stopped her and said he had a proposal. He ordered her to be his woman, leaving Alice stunned. He explained that his older brother, the first prince, had disappeared, and Theo had been sent to the Land of Death. Because of that, Niels believed he would be the next king. Since the people trusted Alice, he wanted her by his side to help him rule the kingdom. He also claimed it was a good deal for Alice because she wouldn't have to fight monsters forever. Alice sighed and laughed, finding it ridiculous that Niels had made it this far. He asked what she meant. Since he was clueless, Alice decided to explain. First, she didn't believe Niels would become king. Second, she could still protect people with her current job, and she was proud of it. Third, there was no way she would ever marry an arrogant fool who thought he was better than everyone else. And lastly, she would always side with Theo. Damn girl. Flipping the middle finger during the count, Alice knew that Niels had played a part in Theo's banishment. Because of that, she saw him as an enemy, just like the king. Suddenly, Niels threw a tantrum, complaining that everyone kept talking about Theo. He unleashed his magic and demanded to know why a useless brat like Theo was so special. Martina was shocked by the huge amount of magic power coming from the selfish prince. Alice asked if this was his special ability. Niels proudly claimed it was the first time he was revealing his great sage gift. He bragged that he had an endless amount of magic and could control all elements, calling it the greatest gift ever. Alice couldn't believe he was letting that power go to his head. Niels then ordered her to stay quiet and submit to his strength. To prove his power, he launched a dangerous fire spell called Gigafire. Surprisingly, Alice cut down the massive fireball with a single slash. Niels stood frozen in shock. Alice figured he was so full of himself that he hadn't done any proper training. Before he could react, she raised her hand and slapped him so hard that he went rolling across the floor. Wiping her hands, she told him never to speak to her again. Furious, Niels shouted that she wouldn't get away with attacking a prince. Alice simply turned to Martina and told her to handle it. Martina sighed, complaining that Alice always acted like this, but she still healed Niels's wound. In an instant, it was as if nothing had happened. Alice smirked and teased him, asking what exactly she had done to him again. Niels, still angry, swore he wouldn't let her off the hook. Alice urged him to tell the truth then, to admit that he got rejected by a girl, lost his temper, used magic, and still got beaten. That was the last straw for Niels. He lost his patience and vowed to send both her and Theo into the depths of despair. Alice simply smiled and promised to remember his words. Then turning away, she told Sana and Martina to leave the palace. Stepping forward, she swore she would go to Theo right away. Meanwhile, Theo used his autocraft to make farming tools for his people. The farmers were happy to finish their work in the fields and thanked Theo for his help. He told them it was nothing and wished them well. Then he asked Layla if there was anything else they needed to do. Layla mentioned that the village's waterways needed repairs. Aisha soon arrived with a basket and said she had made the sandwiches Theo asked for. She had prepared enough for everyone working in the fields. Theo thanked her. The land of death had become much livelier now that everyone had a job and was helping Theo rebuild the land. He felt excited to keep going and improve the land even more with their help. Just then, the warning bells rang. A villager rushed in and reported that a giant wolf was attacking their territory. As soon as Theo heard this, he realized it was someone he knew. The villagers quickly grabbed their weapons, ready to fight. However, the giant wolf told them to put their weapons away, saying she didn't come to fight. Theo ran over and told everyone to wait. His face lit up when he saw that the giant wolf was in fact Luna. Luna felt happy and relieved when Theo finally returned because she had been waiting for him. Suddenly, smoke filled the area, and Luna changed into her humanoid form. She hugged Theo tightly, squeezing him between the towering mountains. She then commented on how he looked more dependable now and assumed he had barely escaped danger. Theo admitted he had been through a lot and asked why Luna had come this time. Luna seemed surprised and wondered if she had forgotten to tell him before. She then mentioned that she would give him an even better gift the next time they met. Theo immediately understood what she meant and started defending himself. Knowing Luna might try something inappropriate in broad daylight, Luna touched his chin and told him to stay still as she moved closer, her lips nearing his. Before she could go any further, Luna suddenly caught a sword that had been swung at her. Layla, the maid, stood before her, demanding that she stay away from Theo. Luna found it unsettling that Layla wasn't even trying to hide her killing intent. Layla accused Luna of trying to steal a kiss from Theo, who she claimed was more valuable than any national treasure. She declared that Luna deserved 10,000 deaths for such a crime. Luna was surprised that a human was judging her and found it amusing. She challenged Layla to go through with it. Theo quickly stepped in, trying to calm the situation. He explained that Luna was the Fenrir he had met while she was asleep. Layla suddenly realized that Luna was the thieving wolf she had heard about. Seeing the rising tension, Theo urged Luna to say something to defuse the situation. Luna stopped teasing Layla and said she had a reason for kissing Theo. She explained that it was to continue giving him her favor. She reminded Theo that she had granted him this favor before when she kissed his forehead. However, back then, she could only give him a small amount of her power. If she had given it all at once, his heart and body would have burst like fireworks. So she had to wait for the small amount of power to settle inside him before giving more. A kiss was the best way to transfer this life favor to him. Layla listened to Luna's explanation but then asked if those were her final words. Theo told Layla to lower her weapon. However, Layla insisted that Luna had committed a crime by staining Theo's pure skin. Seeing how upset Layla was, Luna suddenly realized something. She assumed that Layla was simply jealous. Layla's face turned red and she quickly denied it, saying she only wanted to protect Theo. Luna told her not to be shy. Knowing that Layla didn't want her to take Theo's first kiss, Luna playfully suggested that Layla do it instead. Theo was shocked, and Layla asked what she meant. Luna explained that Layla should also give Theo her own favor. Layla hesitated, asking if that was even possible. Luna assured her that it was. She pointed out that Layla's sword strike earlier had been far stronger than what a normal human could do. She explained that, on rare occasions, certain humans were blessed with divine favor and those who had it could share their power with others. Layla understood that she could share some of her power with Theo. Luna confirmed this, and since both of them were human, she suggested they kiss on the lips right away. She didn't care who went first and told Layla to hurry up. Before they could continue, Theo stopped them and asked why they had decided he should kiss Layla. Luna then asked if he had a problem with it. Theo explained that they couldn't just do it without thinking. He needed to consider Layla's feelings too. However, Layla was already prepared to accept Theo's kiss at any moment. Luna laughed at her for being so eager. Aisha blushed and asked if they were really going to kiss in broad daylight. Theo told Layla not to force herself, but Layla assured him she wasn't. If Theo was okay with it, she would actually love to receive some affection from him. Theo knew Layla was sincere. He glanced at her trembling hands and after a moment of hesitation made up his mind. He agreed but admitted it was his first time and couldn't promise the kiss would be any good. Layla didn't mind since it was her first time too. With that, Theo reached for Layla's cheeks and awkwardly pressed his lips against hers. He wondered if the kiss had successfully transferred the favor. After a few seconds, he pulled away and checked on Layla, only to be confused when she didn't respond. A moment later, she suddenly fainted on the spot, shocking everyone except Luna. Luna tried to hold back her laughter but failed, bursting into loud laughter instead. She found Layla incredibly amusing. Then with a grin, she declared that it was her turn next. However, she needed to wait for Layla's favor to settle first, so Theo's body wouldn't be under too much strain. Since things were now out of order, she decided to handle another matter first. Theo asked what it was, and in response, Luna called some children forward. Suddenly, multiple wolves appeared, barking as if greeting them. Surprised, Theo asked why there were wolves. Luna then explained that they were Fenrir pups, and she wanted Theo to take care of them. When Theo saw the Fenrir pups, he asked if they were Luna's children. Luna explained that they were actually her older sister's pups. "I thought we got a mommy in town, but anyway," she teased Theo, asking if he thought she had a partner, and made it clear that she was still single. Theo quickly said that wasn't what he was worried about. Luna then asked Theo to take care of the pups. She knew it might be risky because the pups were rare and could cause trouble. After hearing her concerns, Theo gently patted one of the pups and looked into its eyes. Luna kept listing the good things about keeping them, but Theo told her not to worry. He said he would happily welcome all of them into his village. Luna was surprised at how fast Theo made his decision, but he said he couldn't leave such cute pups alone. Luna blushed a little and thanked him for his kindness. She told the pups that Theo would be their new caretaker and asked them to show their thanks. Right away, the pups jumped all over Theo, licking him from every direction. It quickly became too much and Theo ended up getting buried in their soft fur. A week later, the Fenrir pups were happily living with the villagers. They played with the children and even helped with farm work. Aisha often came by to feed them, but just like Theo, she was soon buried under their fluffy licks. Watching them made Theo feel a little jealous. While looking around, Theo noticed one pup staying away from the others. When he looked at it, the pup quickly hid. He wondered if something was wrong. Luna suddenly appeared and explained that the pup had always been shy, and it was something they needed to work on. Theo was surprised by her sudden arrival, but he was even more surprised by her new outfit. Luna said she preferred wearing fewer clothes, but Theo told her she couldn't dress like that around the village. Luna just smiled and said it seemed like Theo didn't want anyone else seeing her like that. Theo asked what had been wrong with the pup before. Luna explained that it was the youngest and told him how her older sister had died a few days after giving birth to it. Theo was surprised. Luna said the pup had never felt a mother's love. She had tried her best to act like its mother, but no matter what she did, she couldn't take the real mother's place. Because of this, the pup grew up shy and often stayed away from others. Theo understood. Luna seemed like she wanted to say more, but Theo interrupted and offered to be the pup's friend. Luna was so shocked she couldn't speak right away. Theo wondered if he had done something wrong, but Luna quickly smiled and said he was exactly the kind of person she had hoped to meet. She said she was happy she had come to his land. Theo said he wasn't that great, but Luna suddenly kissed him hard. Theo struggled, but Luna held his chin tightly. When she finally pulled away, Theo angrily asked what she was doing. Luna said she was just updating the favor she had promised him earlier, something she had forgotten about. Theo had forgotten about it too. After that, Luna asked him to take care of the timid pup. Theo wasn't sure how much he could help, but he promised to do his best. Theo didn't waste any time. He walked up to the youngest pup and asked if it wanted to play, but the pup kept running away and stayed at a distance. Theo noticed it didn't run too far, which meant it wasn't scared of him. He suggested playing tag and even offered to be it. Somehow the pup understood and barked before running off. Theo smiled and chased after it. They ran around the village, but the Fenrir pup was very fast. Even though it looked small, Theo realized it was still a Fenrir. He decided to get serious. Using his autocraft skill, he built an earthen wall to block the pup's path. Theo tried to catch it, but the pup easily jumped over the walls and climbed onto the roofs. Theo kept chasing it, building more walls to block its way, but the pup always found a way to dodge them. Little by little, Theo caught up. Seeing this, the pup couldn't help but smile. After an hour, Theo finally started gasping for air because he was out of breath. The pup then stopped running and barked at Theo. It had a big smile on its face and wagged its tail, showing it was having fun. Theo looked happy and said the real game was just beginning. The chase continued until the pup slipped off the roof. Theo quickly saw what happened and used his autocraft skill to make a trampoline on the ground. He also boosted his legs with Fenrir's favor. Then he jumped on the trampoline, flying toward the falling pup. He caught it in midair and used his autocraft skill again to create a soft cushion in front of them. They landed safely, and Theo said he finally caught the pup. The Fenrir pup pouted and barked at him, looking upset. Theo wondered if it wanted to play again. Luna showed up, feeling happy that the pup liked Theo. She called him a natural Fenrir charmer. Theo asked what she meant. He said they just became friends. Luna smiled and quietly watched them snuggle together on the cushion.